One camera, over 3 years. This is a harvest live. I'm Mark Beeman with Mendocino Wine Company, and this story is about the cellar workers, the guys out in the field, the women in the laboratory, and everyone that actually makes wine happen. So it makes sense to start out in the vineyard. Here in Mendocino County, with our access to warm days and very cool nights, that great diurnal shift that's so crucial in quality wine grapes, we also have an incredible level of diversity when it comes to grape varieties. Everything from Alicante Bouschet to Zinfandel grows well here. Old vine and young both flourish in the area. Winemakers will visit vineyards more than 450 times to pull samples, bring them back to the laboratory, have them crushed up, strained off, and the sample is then taken to the laboratory. The leftover grapes do not go to waste. As we have many animals on the property, pigs, sheep, and chickens all come running at the side of our farmer, Jess Arnstein, with the buckets of mixed varieties. They are not too choosy and are certainly happy to have them, especially if already a little bit fermented. Back in the laboratory, juice is analyzed for sugar content and acid to give us an idea of when it might be time to pick. Those numbers are often compared to previous records just to determine where maybe the sweet spot is. Growers are contacted, the fruit is scheduled, and then the pick is on. There is no leisurely pace when it comes to harvesting, especially if there is weather approaching on the horizon. But the crew is quick, efficient, and a friendly competitiveness can emerge amongst the group. The picking season can go on for over 2 months, starting with the early ripening white varietals such as Sauvignon Blanc, Muscat, then Chardonnay, and then on to the reds, Pinot Noir, Grenache, Zinfandel, Cabernet, and finally Petit Syrah. Once a load is full and the truck has been filled completely, they'll drive to the winery, stop at the scale to get weighed. White grapes can be loaded directly to the press by way of a conveyor belt, and while in the press they get squeezed off to just take the free run juice to the tank. Reds are crushed and destemmed and then sent through must lines directly to the top of the tank so they can ferment on their skins. Or with smaller vineyards, we crush to half-ton fermentation bins. The stems that are separated from the juice and skins is captured and then loaded into a truck, and yeah, that bin he just moved was incredibly heavy. The truck will then take the load of stems up to a designated area on the property and dump out in rows, and then that will go through its own fermentation before being reapplied as compost to aid in the growth of vines, both young and old. Back at the winery, freshly crushed grapes are sampled. Then the jug of juice, which can represent up to 25 tons of a truck of grapes, is walked back to the laboratory. The sample is then handed off to the laboratory princesses, who are the best in the business, where another panel of analyses are run. From this data and an approximation of the yield, yeast strains are selected. Occasionally a consultant may be brought in, and after formalities are exchanged, samples tasted and opinions given, a work order is written up, almost like a prescription for the wine. The selected yeast is hydrated, aerated, and brought to ideal temperature along with nutrients. Proper nutrient balance is crucial for yeast health because yeast can act a bit like an adult on Halloween. Alcohol and a lot of sugar don't mix without good nutrition. An ideal temperature is set, and after a few days, the yeast will begin to act. That was a lot of technical stuff, so here's a video of our winery cat to get your attention back. Tanks. All shapes and sizes, gotta have them. Diversity is a key because different vineyard blocks and varieties all come in different volumes, and you want to keep them separate right up to the end point when you're ready to blend. With so many different sized tanks, it can be quite a task finding that one empty tank that you're going to need for later. Fermenters are checked daily for sugar by way of hydrometer, which measures the density of a liquid. Dry wine with no sugar actually shows as less buoyant than water, so if you ever get a chance to swim in a pool of wine, don't do it. As red wines ferment, CO2 is generated by the yeast as a byproduct. The skins are carried to the top of the tank to form a cap, kind of like little parachutes. And since the skins contain all the compounds, the pigment, the tannin, the flavors, the aroma compounds, we want to make sure that that is mixing with the juice that is fermenting down below it. So this cap is then physically punched down, or through the use of specialized sprinklers, pumped over from the bottom over the top to wet the cap back down. When fermentation is complete and all the sugars become delicious alcohol, we drain off the free run to another tank And then it's time to get to work and hand shovel out the leftover skins, or pumice as we call it. A 50-ton fermenter can take 2 guys over an hour. It pays to be quick because that tank might be scheduled for fresh grapes that same day. The pumice is then loaded into bins. The conveyor belt is moved into place, and forklifts are used to move the pumice to the press. Once the press is loaded and full, the door is shut, and the rubber bladder inside is inflated to apply pressure. The dark and tannin-rich press wine can then be blended with a free run or kept separate. And the barrels have arrived. While they're useful in the fact that they hold 60 gallons of wine, barrels also apply flavor to the wine, as the toasted wood fibers leach unique chemicals into the wine that impart flavors like caramel, chocolate, coffee, you name it. Not all wines need to be oak aged, but sometimes it just needs a little bit of seasoning. Now that we have wine in tank, wine in barrels, all spread throughout the winery, they all need to get checked up on every now and then. Kind of like unruly kids. You just got to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. This leads to a lot of walking. During harvest over the course of a day, it's pretty easy to put on 12 miles, and this can wear down on your shoes and, well, equipment has wear and tear as well, which is why it's crucial to your team to have a maintenance crew that is knowledgeable and serious about keeping everything running. Because if a piece of equipment fails, the whole operation of harvest can stop. So if you see a maintenance person, tell them thanks. They don't get to hear that as often as they should. As wines mature, they still need to be monitored as they go through their evolution. As reds are finishing malolactic acid conversion and tannins resolve themselves over time, tasting is needed to be done in the cellar, and I gotta admit, this is one of my favorite parts of the job. When harvest has died down enough, it's time to pull individual samples of varieties from both barrel and tank and taste them and judge them and evaluate them on their own individual attributes in accordance to aroma, flavor, acid, and tannin. Then come up with a blend of the combination of those attributes that makes the best wine. While all this is going on at work, life goes on. You end up missing your kids, and they seem to grow so much during the time that you're away from them, usually for several days at a time. Harvest does provide an opportunity to clarify, though, where your priorities need to be. And that's with these guys. And living in wine country, there's actually plenty to do outside of harvest time in the great outdoors that really more than makes up for it. It's tough to beat eating blackberries from a kayak. If you're lucky, you'll find a moment to yourself, and you can even have a glass of wine while you're doing things you enjoy too. In the end, the reason for all the work we do is for you, the wine consumer. I have to say, there's an immense pride in knowing that one's work goes to other people's joy and relaxation, something that can provide pleasure and escape from everyone else's own work day. So at the end of harvest, when it's the final cleaning of the crusher and presses, the hoses are stowed for the season, know that we're all relieved to have the grapes all in, but we will be ready to do it all over. From the camera ready to the camera shy, to the strong and the calm. The jokers. The personalities that maintain their humor throughout the long hours. Every season we see fresh faces who may have never worked a harvest before, and just like anyone, they need guidance. Our winery is undeniably wealthy in the experience of the elder statesmen, and 40 years of knowledge is not uncommon here. We all have our specialties and do them with pride, even the welcoming committee. So next time you're having a glass of wine and pondering who to toast, raise a salute to the harvest team. Thanks for sticking around and watching this. I hope everybody learned something, and if you're in the area, stop on by the winery. We'd love to see you. Oh yeah, and before I forget, please share this with your friends. If it gets to be popular enough, maybe we'll do it again, and next time we'll get somebody to narrate it like James Earl Jones, and spend a few dollars on production costs.
No, you gotta look at me though. No, come on.